Hello, beautiful people. So, today we are going to talk about titration. Sorry about that. Wiggling camera here. So, today we're going to talk about titration. Titration is, first of all, I love the word. But titration is so important. Titration is something that I continue to do with every single healing modality, shift, change, awareness that I am currently doing. And as our phases, so even though I've healed autoimmune and come out on the other side of it, I'm still going through phases and cycles in my healing journey. I'm still growing, I'm still evolving and going through this healing journey. It doesn't end for me. And so there is still obviously deeper layers and deeper parts. And so it's not like, when we get to a certain point, we reached a goal. Usually once we reach a goal, we make a new goal, right? So we're all still, most of us who have come out on the other side of autoimmune. I mean, there are some people, right, that just go back about their lives, but we are so forever changed. If you saw my last video, I talk about this as well. We are forever changed. And most of us do have a full spiritual awakening and a lifestyle change. And both of those usually go together. And we continue to do so much for our health and everything. And so anyway, titration is, in a nutshell, implementing whatever it is that you are doing. So in the nervous system world, when we use this word, we're talking about our capacity. So it's like titrating in little bits. Titration means implementing little tiny bits at a time and allowing time for integration in between until you make another shift or change. In the nervous system world, it's kind of like this, right? It's like we're always expanding and growing, and we are going up, but we have these sort of waves of like where we're having to integrate, where we're having to release repressed things, where we're moving through a trauma. We might feel some heaviness, and also we are all going through a lot of different cycles in our year. For us women, these cycles in our month. I've talked about this in another video a little bit as well. And these heavy phases are times where we are intended to be processing and going through a shedding, a release, a change, a shift. That is not always easy. When we talk about titration, it's doing things in these little bits so that we don't blow out our capacity and go too far outside of our capacity. So we can talk about titrating a detox protocol. Instead of going to a water fast, which is like crazy, we might just titrate a detox by simply going a few weeks by cutting out processed foods. And then after those few weeks is over and our body has made that shift and our body has sort of integrated, might take longer for some people. It depends on where you are. Maybe it takes a month or 2 months for some people to get there, right? And to make the change, and for our bodies to we'll go through a phase of detoxification. We might not feel great. Maybe some of us feel great, where everybody's different. But then we might cut out grains. Maybe we want to say, okay, we only want to eat fruits, vegetables, meats, And then, I don't know, whatever. Some people go fully plant-based. And some people go fully carnivore, and then some people do these, these are elimination diets, but in terms of detox, right? We can still detox in these phases. If somebody wants to do like a juice fast or a water fast, it's smart to not go from eating standard American diet to a water fast. Like, you want to titrate that, you're going to blow your system out. And a lot of people do tend to go to these extreme things. I talked about this in capacity video because it is this sort of adrenalized feeling of doing something extreme that kind of gets people amped up. It's a bit of a rush. If that is your hypervigilance pattern, then you want to slow it down, slow everything down, and start to titrate. Because what I have seen happen is that these are the people who it catches up, and they've been running hypervigilance patterns for so long. By the time they're 45, they're completely void of energy, or running into chronic pain, or whatever, autoimmune and all the things, going through shutdown. Another example of titration is when I found out I had lupus. I was 40 by the time I was diagnosed, by the way. I was misdiagnosed for years. And when I finally found out that it was lupus, the doctor asked, did I want to go on hydroxychloroquine medication to help with my symptoms? And I had been working so hard, and I had been on keto for 3 years, and I was just switching over to plant-based, again, doing all those extreme things. And I didn't understand the language of nervous system at all. I didn't know anything about this, but I wanted to try. I had been off of anything pharmaceutical or over the counter for many years. At this point, 6 or 7 years. And off processed foods and everything. And I was pretty strictly trying to heal something. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I didn't feel good. So I was doing all this healing work around diet and lifestyle. And, I decided to take the medication because I needed a break. My body just needed a break. And so I made a plan to take it for a year. And intuitively, I felt, even after that year is up, I want to slowly wean off of it. I don't want to just stop taking it. I want to then take it only 5 days a week, and then 3 days a week. So what I did after that year, within that year, I started learning the language of the nervous system. Once I was titrating myself off of, the whole process of going on it is sort of titrating, right? Because I was already outside of my capacity. Even though I didn't know these words and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, I was definitely outside of my capacity doing all the things I was doing. And so what that medication helped me do was tolerate my symptoms better so that I could incorporate more healing modalities. It kind of just gave me some time and space to figure out what I was going to do and to go deeper into my work. 'Cause at that point, I knew I needed to explore other options. In that time, I found nervous system work and trauma healing, and I started that journey. And by the time I was titrating my medication off, I already had some tools in place. So titrating is kind of like, you slowly pull back on something and you slowly put in something else, right? It's like titrating your capacity could be when you are fully shut down, and let's say you're non-functional, and it's hard for you to even get off the couch. If you're in this state, you need some movement. And even though it is so hard, I can remember days when it was difficult for me to just make it to my car from my house, which is like 10 feet, less than maybe 10 feet away, my driveway. Like, really difficult. So I would have to, obviously, I still had to do things. I still had to pick up my kids and be a mom. I would literally, in my mind, titrate, even though I didn't necessarily understand what I was doing. I would titrate, okay, just make it to the door. And then from there, just make it to your car. And then from there, just make it to, you know what I mean? But if you are shut down in this way and you're experiencing chronic fatigue, to the point that you are pretty immobilized, then titration would mean standing up, doing some touching your toes, maybe 5 times, right? 3 times. Walking to your door and back, and doing that a couple of times throughout the day. Tiny, tiny, tiny bits. The opposite of titration would be forcing yourself, even though it might actually feel good on your system, but forcing yourself to go out for a run. Again, this is everybody is very, very different. But most people who are experiencing that extreme amount of shutdown are experiencing that shutdown because they've already done the hypervigilance pattern and they've blown out their capacity. And they're now in this other shutdown part. Obviously, there's a lot of different reasons for shutdown, all the trauma and all the things, not just an absence of something that runs a pattern, right? Which is usually what hypervigilance is. But we could be experiencing chronic fatigue because we have had abuse and things like that. Sometimes maybe it is helpful to go, if you can. It's really hard for most people who are chronically shut down to just go and run, but some people can. But what I would recommend is to still titrate it. 5 minutes, 5-minute run, 5-minute walk, 5-minute run, 5-minute walk, and then be done, and then see how you feel. What can happen is what I see a lot is people who have chronic fatigue don't have it 24/7, right? All of us are experiencing what we call flares in the autoimmune world, right? So when we are feeling good, we go and do everything, right? We do every single errand that we have on our list for the week. We go to a Soul Cycle class or, go to some crazy workout, CrossFit or something like that. And then we make all these plans and do all this stuff. And we're like, we're feeling good. Yeah, it's over. I'm never going to. And then 2 days later, shut down. I hear this all the time. What would have been beneficial is to titrate that energy, right? So slowing it down and doing a little bit less. So when we are in that highly activated state, because a lot of us, once disease hits in, we have gas and brake on at the same time. There's still freeze underneath that activation, even though you might not be feeling it at times. So what we want to do is when we're highly activated and that pedal, that gas is on, we want to slow it down. When we're chronically shut down, we want to try to move it up a little bit. And this is the dance of titration. This is the dance of nervous system work and nervous system healing. So again, I incorporate titration in everything I do. If I'm feeling really heavy one day and things feel difficult, I'm highly functional, and I have most days I'm pretty balanced. But of course, I have my days where I'm feeling heavy, depending on my cycle, what's going on with my kids, all these things. We all do. I think that a lot of this is we're expected to be high performers 24/7, and it just doesn't happen. For most of us, it's not an organic, natural state for us to be in, or healthy, for that matter. So if I'm having a heavy day, I'll titrate my workout. My work out throughout the day. I'll say, okay, here's my list. Instead of trying to cram it all in one day or just bust things out super fast, I'll say, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to get some movement in, tend to my body, maybe eat a meal, whatever. Then I'm going to do one other thing. And maybe I'm even going to take a couple things off my plate. I've even titrated dinners because I want my kids to have an organic, whole food, good dinner, or they've requested something that's like, complicated, but I want them to have it, right? It's like, but I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing this. We all have this stuff, right? So I'll titrate it. I'll try to I'll say, well, let's have that tomorrow night. And what I'll do is I'll go to the store, then I'll prep while they're gone, little bits. So I'm not trying to cram the whole meal in an hour. I'll wash my veg. I'll get everything ready to go. Maybe I'll even do a little cooking and set something aside so it's already prepared and I can just mix it in later, whatever the dish is. This is titration. It's a beautiful way to live, by the way, because what it allows us to do is slowly incorporate things in a way that actually feels good to our system, because we are staying within our capacity. And we are pushing on the edge a little bit with it as well. So we are still expanding that capacity. But in the meantime, we're finding a rhythm, a flow of getting our things done, of doing what we need to do that feels good. And I think if you're in hypervigilance and you're running a lot of activation, that does feel sort of misleadingly good, right? That adrenalized sort of activation feels good. It might take some practice. It probably will take some practice and some time for you to feel good in the more rested states of being. And not that we are wanting to be in a rest and digest all the time. We don't. We want that nice flow of activation and rest and digest, but we don't want the activation to be all the way up here. We want it to be here. And so until we're understanding or accepting or maybe appreciating how this activation feels, which feels a lot more like contentment, feels a lot more joyous, it feels a lot less rushed, it feels a lot, it might be until we really understand, accept and appreciate, like I said, how that feels, it might be uncomfortable to get there, because we might feel like, I'm slowing down too much. I want to be doing more, and this doesn't feel like enough. That's the dysregulation talking, Once we have this regulated flow, we heal more, and we are able to not go into that burnout, which is what we need. But again, I use titration in every aspect of my life. Around the holidays, I titrate how much, how many Christmas parties I may go to, or, whatever it is. Certainly while I was healing, back in the earlier few years ago when I was still going into really bad shutdown, I would certainly titrate my social engagements a lot. So anyway, that's it for today. If you have questions, please leave a comment and go back and listen to some of my other videos, because they all are tied in and connected together. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon.